another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Sponhour and Theo Ash. And welcome back to part 2 of our NFL draft recap. Last time we took a look at the NFC teams and how each team from the NFC did in the NFL draft. And today we're taking a look at the AFC. Should be a fun time. But before we get into that, Matt, Theo, how are you guys doing on this beautiful Wednesday morning?
I'm good. I don't have much to report, though. It's a Wednesday morning, you know.
It is. That's fair.
Yes, I'm doing fine. I got a fish tank. Well, I've had a fish tank that has been kind of set up, but it hasn't had no water or fish in it for a while. And I finally put water in it. And I got a couple snails. We'll see about the fish. But
nice.
That's
How
my
big?
big project. It's only 5 gallons. It's tiny. So yeah. I'm not going
It's like
full.
super pathetic, dude. It's just real weak showing. I have a 10-gallon tank for everybody who doesn't know. I'm twice as good as Theo.
All right. I'm going to go get a 20-gallon tank after this episode.
I'm actually, when I move here soon in the next couple of months, I'm going to upgrade tanks.
I'm just going to throw my whole shit away.
Yeah.
I feel like
You might
fish
as well
tank
mail
is my
those suckers
next.
to me.
Mail them. I feel like fish tank is my next project.
Bro annexed my fish tank.
No, fish tanks are great. I love fish tanks. I really like aquascaping too, but I don't have the time or like the know-how to do that. But when I turn like 45, 50, I'm going to start really thinking about it. I'm hoping I can have like a little bit of money to be messing around with that. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's where they make like...
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm with you.
Cool.
Yes.
I know.
I feel like my dream house would have a giant wall of a fish tank, basically.
Yeah, I can't even lie. I would love a huge ass fish tank in my house with all sorts of exotic creatures. It's a little bit aquascapey, my fish tank, though. Like, I got sand in there instead of pebbles and like rocks and shit.
There you
You
go.
think you're better than everybody, huh?
I got a little thing that goes under the sand, and so there's like an entrance to it, and then you can see the like under the rest of the fish tank there's like a little tunnel. So I got some elements.
Okay.
It's small, but size doesn't matter.
You sound like me talking about my lawn.
Okay.
I'm out mowing my lawn, and people are what? And I have a small lawn, and
yeah, it's not about size. It's about what you do with it.
Exactly. I was out tending to the lawn. Someone complimented my my trimming and my edging. I was like, oh, that means a lot, man. What is
this
that?
would be the perfect time for a Manscaped read, but no.
no. That was like a couple weeks ago.
They complimented your edging?
Yeah.
Anyway.
What?
What?
The dirt was so overgrown onto the sidewalk, I had to like push it back, create a nice line.
Yeah. You know what? I understand what you're saying. I've seen the guy on TikTok who like comes and does lawns for free. He'll like knock on some person's house and he'll be like, okay, what can I clean up your yard? And they're like, what? And then he just does it all, and it looks so nice. I was you, but you were doing it for yourself.
I was doing it for myself. Selfish.
You were edging all by yourself. But let's talk about the AFC draft.
The AFC draft. What division do we want to start in?
How about the North and we go
just
clockwise?
Get it out of the way.
Yeah, and it just makes the most sense to me when I think about how to go through divisions is start
Southeast
and go around.
Yeah, we started with the South last time because the Falcons were just so horrific.
True.
But yeah, we can start with the North this time. Should we just start with Cleveland, get it over with?
Sure.
How are you feeling?
I feel pretty good. You know, I for the second year in a row to not have a first round draft pick, I thought they came away with some pretty good players. Theo, I will always love the quote, "We will stop the run on the way to the quarterback."
Yeah,
that's exactly what they're doing. I think Michael Hall, I think he'll be a really good addition for us up front. And Zach Zinter on the offensive line, I think will be a good piece. I'm always a fan of the Browns just doing consistent investment in that unit, even if it's not like a desperate need, but we're not super like perfect there either. So I'm definitely for bringing in a guy from that Michigan offensive line. So I'm pretty happy. Like if just those guys alone, I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, I think you did what you could. Michael Hall is a great scheme fit for the Browns. He's not the greatest run defender, but like Jim Schwartz says, like you said, they're not too worried about that.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really great pickup where they got him, and one of the best picks in the draft, to be completely honest with you. Like I think everyone should like it. Everyone should have a high grade on that pick. Michael Hall is, to me, he was a borderline top 50 player. I think the stuff against the run was a little worrying. He's a little almost slot machine-esque, it feels like, where he can put a crazy move on you right off the line, and it kind of works or it doesn't. But it works a good amount of the time. Like he's got really good hand fighting and is really disruptive, and it can happen pretty quickly for him. Like just boom, move. He's past the guy. So I liked him a good amount as a pass rusher, and they got him at a good time.
And then at the very least, we got Jamari Thrash, who he passes the name test as a wide receiver. So hopefully he just doesn't.
I watched the historic battle between Jamari Thrash and Bub Means in the Louisville versus Pitt game live. I feel very
rocks.
Thrash is like fine. I think that he's succeeded kind of everywhere that he's been. He was at, where was he? He was at Georgia State, had 1,100 yards. He was at Louisville, had 63 receptions, 850 yards. At the Senior Bowl, he had a pretty good showing. So he's always been productive. But he's like kind of good at everything. I feel like he's just got no trait that's like, he's like a B minus everywhere.
It's weird to think about like where he's going to end up slotting in for that Browns receiving core, because he could be as high as wide receiver 2, it feels like, or he could be as low as wide receiver 5.
To begin, it'll be low. He's not going to beat out Jerry Jeudy or Elijah Moore as a 5th round rookie. But behind them,
Elijah Moore was not good last year. So
you're right. Maybe Elijah Moore could be a shocking replacement, but he's got as good a chance as anybody to compete for reps as a day 3 receiver. So maybe he can be a little Dobbsy. Coming out of Nevada, maybe you would say like Dobbs didn't have any A+ traits, or still doesn't have any A+ traits, but he just is kind of well-rounded. And I thought that was a fine pick, and it's a wide receiver, it's exciting. And I thought the Browns did a nice job considering how little capital they had.
Yeah. I think the whole AFC North did pretty good, but Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with most of what y'all said. Hall, I think, fits what they like to do, and I thought he should have maybe gone.
He's pretty young too, isn't he?
He's also very, very young. That helps. And they drafted the only Cincinnati player in this draft, Juwan Briggs, in the 7th round, who, is not great in my opinion.
But he's stamped, and that's all that matters.
No, he's not stamped. He's
I don't think. He's got very short arms, and I think he's going to have a tough time in the NFL. But he was a very solid player for Cincinnati for a long time. So shout out to him.
Shout out. Well, we can move on from the Browns. I don't have a whole lot more to add there. Should we move on to Cincinnati then? That would be the next Ohio team. They got
get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. They got Mims in the first, which could be super boomer bust. He is really, really good. But as far as time on the field goes, it's like Zion almost. It might be worse than Zion as far as ability to stay healthy. Super big and powerful and incredibly explosive, but that's probably why he's always hurt. And then in the second, they got Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. They did need to get some more interior defensive line help. So I think that's a pretty good pickup, and he's a solid run defender for them. Maybe you would have liked to have seen some more secondary picks or like some more high secondary picks for them, but it's hard to.
I really liked what they did. I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, Mims is boomer bust, and I'm a little worried that he's not going to stay healthy. But when he is on the field, he's fantastic. I mean, there's just not many guys his size who can move around. It gives him a very big tackle duo, which I think is a fun way to build your team out. Chris Jenkins was a great pick where they got him. They needed somebody who was going to be stout in the run game after losing Reeder. I feel like he's certainly going to be that, and I feel like he's going to be a pretty solid starter from day one. And then Burton, in terms of like talent, I thought that for where they got him, it was pretty good. He's obviously like a pretty physical guy, and he can move well. He's going to come in there and probably be wide receiver 3 from day one, or at least compete for it. So I thought overall I really liked their draft.
Yeah, they were one of my favorites. The Mims pick makes a lot of sense. Obviously, we've been over the concerns. They're obvious. 8 games, bad competition in a lot of those games. But and what a smooth and natural pass protector. And I mean, he as a run defender, or I always say defender when I talk about offensive linemen. It is you're kind of defending the run, like you're defending the running back from the. But I got to stop that. He's really powerful, so he could be one of the top in the league, I think. So, and I can't hate that. They had Trent Brown, who could have been a capable right tackle, probably, but you're relying on a journeyman vet there. It's just better to finally get a long-term.
I feel like you'd be banking on Trent Brown to stay healthy too.
Yeah, you definitely would be. So to get a franchise cornerstone at that position is key for them. It's been the need for a long time. Chris Jenkins, great pick. And man, Burton is the wild card of maybe this entire draft. You watch him move around. He is so fast, like real take the top off speed, adjusts to the ball beautifully in the air, makes subtle movements. Like he's not a real jukey guy. Like he is an elusive guy, but it's not in
but he
major
doesn't waste
ways.
A lot of time,
that's a good way to look at it. Just no wasted movement with him. Micro movements is I saw it described online one time, and I think that's a good way to put it. Just little adjustments that he makes to do things after the catch or throughout the course of the route. So he's got a chance with Joe Burrow to really, really be something. It's just he wasn't super productive at Alabama. He was like in the 700-800 yard range. And then also he's got character concerns. Like when they lost to Tennessee, the Tennessee fans stormed the field and then he like shoved a girl, which is enough. I mean, you got to be a total fucking idiot to do that. Like you got to be a total fucking idiot to do that. So
you just got to get out.
Yeah. So we'll see about that. But man, if he hits, it could be a huge steal on day 2, because as far as talent goes, I think that he really matches up with certainly any wide receiver outside of the top 3 in this class.
I think that's fair. I feel like my only concern is, we've named 2 of their top 3 picks and we're like, well, if they hit, that'll be huge for them. But that's my only big concern. But as far as the talent goes, you guys are absolutely right. It's up there with anyone else in this draft. I don't know if there's a whole lot more.
Eric All is also kind of a potential sleeper. He's got some major injury concerns. I think he's had 2 season enders in a row, and his drop rate is like 14%. But But he's about as natural as a receiver as you'll get at the tight end position in this class. Okay. He's a nuanced route runner. He's talented with the ball in his hands. He's a little loose with the ball in his hands. Like, he has the drop rate, and I also thought like he'd go into contact holding it out, like he's LaShawn McCoy or something. I'm like, you're gonna fumble, dude, and get taken off the field forever. But he was someone also with kind of some boomer bust potential. So we'll see. This could be the greatest draft in history if it all works out. It's probably not going to all work out, but if any of those guys hit, they might have a good starter on their hands. And
yeah,
I mean, if Iowa tight ends are.
Yeah, if one of those guys, those three guys hit, and then we expect Jenkins will probably be pretty good, you'd feel pretty good about this draft for Cincinnati at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel as good about Cincinnati as any team in the AFC right now, I'd say.
As far as how their draft went, I agree.
And just in general, their roster, I do wonder how they'll be looked at as we kind of get into record prediction season. I think people will be pretty high on them. The Ravens kind of were great last year and lost a lot. Mm-hmm. I think the general the Bills, like, people are going to be sick of the Bills and predicting them to do anything at this point. So I think people will turn to the Bengals and say, why can't this be their year? And I would agree with that if that's the general consensus. I think that at least that's my thought.
The corner room is definitely a concern. But outside of that,
Hilton, DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt, yeah, it's not great, but they got two new safeties, Von Bell, Geno Stone. Sorry, Blaiden, but your safety duo got replaced.
I like Battle. I still like Battle. I still think Battle can be, but Geno Stone is like good already.
Yeah.
So I would think they would rather have Geno Stone back there. But let's move on to the team that won this division last year, the Baltimore Ravens. Shocker, at pick 30, they got Nate Wiggins. Who would have thought that they would have come away with a falling great player that everyone has concerns about at the last minute? It's like, this guy's one of the highest profiled DBs in all of college football for the entire process up until like the last 2 weeks. And then everyone is like, oh, Quinion Mitchell. And it was the same thing that happened with Kyle Hamilton. So,
yeah, getting Nate Wiggins at 30, what a home run. I think he's the best corner in the class. The metrics would back this up. He has the best stable coverage metrics per PFF. He's like 98th percentile man grade. Like, yards allowed per route run is crazy with him. He just was completely locked down last year. Playing on an island in man coverage over and over and over again. Tough assignments against FSU with Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. Didn't matter. Yeah. He was locked down. He'll get physical with you even though he's on the lighter side. He fell because the run support is questionable. Maybe didn't crush the pre-draft process in terms of interviews. But there's a lot of corners out there who aren't super hard-nosed in run support and make Pro Bowls every year. I think that Nate Wiggins, in terms of coverage talent, it does remind me a little bit of what happened with Christian Gonzalez when he fell. It's like he's the most smooth, he's the most fluid, he's super locked down. And then it seemed like the NFL questioned his toughness. Maybe the production on the ball obviously wasn't as good as some other players like Forbes, so he fell.
And then he guarded Tyreek Hill.
And maybe this is a guy who watched what's the meme? Guy who watched something once. This reminds me. This is giving a lot of
Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Dude who only knows Christian Gonzalez. Yeah.
Is anyone else getting Christian Gonzalez vibes? But that's what it reminds me of. It's like he's my favorite and then he fell and now he's with a great franchise and will probably develop.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I thought Wiggins was, one of the best picks of the first round, and it was classic Ravens to take the guy who was falling. They always seem to do that. I thought their draft outside of that was all right. I hadn't watched a lot of Rosengarten, so I can't have like a super strong opinion about that. We did watch Fatanu, and he didn't show up to me a ton, so take that however you want.
That's probably a good thing.
He's fine. I thought that was a solid pick in the second round. Adisa Isaac in the third was one of my least favorite picks of the third round.
I'm not a huge fan of him either. I mean, when we watched him, it was a lot of like high effort stuff, and he wasn't flashing like big time traits. And it's like, I just don't know about you being like a super high end player in the NFL. But also, we were getting down to like pick 100. So I feel like I'm starting to, at the end of the third, reel back my like, hey, you really whiffed here. That being said, Tez Walker is the wide receiver choice, was not my favorite. If they wanted a deep, like, I think his game's super limited. We've talked about him and like his ability to break back on like comebacks and whatnot. It's really not that fantastic. Like, it's honestly comically bad.
Yeah.
And it's like,
he's that deep threat with inconsistent hands. Like, I feel like we've all had that archetype on the team.
And it's like, man, at 30, you're sitting there, or at the 30th pick in the third round, you're sitting there with Franklin on the board, and you wanted a deep threat. I really would have thought that the Ravens could have done that.
Yeah, that would have been,
it would have been very on brand for the Ravens to do that. So I don't hate their draft by any means. DJ Tampa is a guy who's getting a lot of hype, and they got him. Anytime you get some dudes who fall a little bit. That's probably fair. But anytime you're racking up guys who maybe fell a little bit, and on day 3, I think on average it's a good thing. But the Wiggins pick overall just is going to make it hard for me to say it's not a good draft.
Yeah, and Adisa Isaac, I feel like fell a decent amount to his hype. Like when we went over the consensus big board for edge defenders, I feel like he was pretty highly regarded. Sometimes even higher than Chop. So
yeah, he was highly regarded for other people. So maybe we're wrong about that, and it was a good pick at 3. But I just wasn't like, for a day 2 pick. I just don't think he profiled as a backup to me. I don't think he's gonna be a good starter.
I mean,
but
how many pass rushes do the Ravens have where they probably would be a backup on other teams?
Yeah, I mean, their whole team right now is interesting. I'm looking. Did they make any free agent acquisitions? There's Derrick Henry. That was their big one.
Yeah,
it's not color coded on our lads right now. Okay,
it's Derrick Henry, but yeah, they lost quite a bit. I feel like
they did.
Especially the secondary is probably the biggest thing that's like. I mean, they still have Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, and they still have Marlon Humphrey, and they added Nate Wiggins. They did a good, and they added TJ Tampa, who we'll see in the 4th round. He's got good traits, but he was a really brutal tackler, and his technique and press coverage reminded me of like a PK keeper. He would like kind of open his hips one direction and just kind of hope that that's the way that the wide receiver was going, and if he went the other way, it was bad news for him. So I was like, he could get a little cooked. I don't know. They just didn't have the amount of capital to replace everything that they lost. But when you go through their roster, Andrew Voorhees is their left guard. That's not great, but he's a young player, a kind of a question mark. It's not like someone we know is bad, but it's probably bad. He was getting a little bit of hype last year, but fell in the draft. They just re-signed Rashad Bateman and got Tez Walker. I don't know. It's a little it's uninspiring, but they're the Ravens, and
it's been uninspiring
still
before.
Enough there that I can say it'll probably still be fine.
Well, I don't think it's a shock. I mean, we said this is the Ravens' year to do it. They're probably not going to be as good next year. I mean, that was sort of the whole storyline in the playoffs. I still think they're going to be pretty good, but probably not quite as good as last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
What's the next team? We got
Pittsburgh.
The Steelers.
Last team in the North.
Steelers fans think I will never say anything good about their team, and then
That's me.
I hate them.
I will never say anything good about their team. I hate them.
I liked their draft. I liked Falatanu a ton, obviously. I think that him and Zach Frazier are going to, along with the running back duo that they have, is going to vault them near the top in terms of most dangerous rushing attacks, especially if Fields is out there, which I think I would do. I would rather start Fields than Wilson, to be completely honest. And I think you could at the very least say this is the best running team in football, maybe. So, and they got Cordero Patterson.
That's why I liked it, because I feel like they had really wanted to run the ball, but sometimes their offensive line investments hadn't like matched the amount that they wanted to run. And it's like, okay, well, if you want to have that identity, you got to invest not just in, a first round running back and not just, we're going to run it a lot, but you got to have the offensive line to back it. You go and get Fatanu and Frazier both at value picks, and then you bring in Arthur Smith and you get Justin Fields. It's like, okay, I don't know if the Steelers' ceiling is necessarily like insanely high, but at least you've invested and spec'd into that identity very, very hard. And if you believe that, Smith can draw it up decently, and you think your defense is going to step up, then all right. I think you're probably going to have a good shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, I worry that they left the draft with only Roman Wilson at receiver help. I'm not the world's biggest Roman Wilson fan. I think that really the secret sauce of that Michigan offense wasn't really any of the players as much as it was the offensive line and play calling. I think that Wilson is a bit limited and will have a huge role. So if you're expecting huge things out of him, I don't know. But I liked it. A lot of their other picks. I like the offensive line picks that they made. Mason McCormick is going to be a great backup to get him in the fourth round. I get it. I know that they already took two guys, but to have him just sitting there, you're going to need him. Like offensive linemen are going to go down, especially in the interior spots. Like throw him in there. I think he's going to do work. Didn't love the Peyton Wilson pick like other people do. Like I don't think that Peyton Wilson is this great linebacker who just fell because of injury concerns, like it's being made out. He obviously ran really well. He was on the consensus board, I think, at number 1, but his arms are so short. I really think that he struggles to disengage from blocks. In coverage, his skill set was so limited, as all of these linebackers are in college, but it's no different with him. So just because he's fast, you can't project him to be a good coverage guy. He was rushing the passer a lot, wasn't super effective at it. I worry about his tackling. I worry about his ability to get off blocks. I worry about his ability in coverage. I worry that he's just kind of a crazy fast effort guy. He had some amazing track downs, like from across the field, that were sick. But in terms of consistent down-to-down impact, I thought he was more of a day 3 player than a day 2 player. So from
some people
my
had him as
Steelers,
a day 1 player. So
I know that was completely crazy to me.
You guys met in the middle here.
Yeah. So I think Wilson and both Wilsons, actually, they're both named Wilson. The Wilsons were overrated picks, but I liked all the offense. I think their offensive line got way, way better. And that's not nothing.
Yeah. I like how their run game could look this year for sure. Yeah. Nothing else really to say about it. They just built out the line. Let's move on to the next division. If we're going according to a compass, that would be the AFC East. Could start with the Patriots. Drake May. Welcome back, Tom Brady.
I think it's going to go a lot better than the Mac Jones
I agree.
experiment.
I agree.
Say that much.
I think my big thing is he's going to be in a better situation than he wasn't in college. I think that is, to me, pretty. Jalen Polk might be better than any receiver that he played with at UNC.
But is that relative to the competition? Is that true?
Because is any guy playing on an NFL offense, like maybe a couple of guys, like you could sort of be like maybe.
I mean, who do the Patriots have at? They have Juju. Who isn't? He's not terrible. Hyping up Juju Smith-Schuster.
Get Drake May some help. I'm already starting the agenda.
They're going to need to get better, but I think at the very least, we talk about at pick 3, they are an offense that lacked any sort of stability last year. You needed to bring in someone, whether that's Marvin Harrison Jr. or Drake May, just to add some ounce of supercharged to this offense.
Right.
Drake May is going to be the first element to that. And if it were Marvin Harrison Jr., we'd say, who the hell is throwing him the ball, right? It would be Bailey Zappi or Jacoby Brissett. Like,
yeah, their receiving core is actually.
I agree that going Drake May over Marvin Harrison Jr. was the right call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wasn't as big of a fan of the Polk pick as a lot of people were. A lot of people were really, really high on Polk. I saw him in the first round, like in a couple mock drafts. Schrager had him to the Chiefs at number 31. And a ton of draft experts love him, but I just watched him and I was like, he's slow. He just takes his sweet time running these routes. And I think versus zone, he can be effective, but I did worry a little bit about his ability to separate versus man at the next level. I was a little bit unsure about the speed. I couldn't quite commit to him like other people could. And I like Javon Baker even a little bit more.
Baker.
I like Baker a lot. But Baker is also a bit slow. I guess I worry a little bit about this Patriots receiving core when they put their best 3 out there. About the speed of it all, like Juju and Bourne and Polk and Baker. Pop Douglas obviously has a lot of juice, but that's the one thing I worried about with this draft is I didn't think they left with a really dynamic receiver. I like Javon Baker so much, so I think to get him and Polk, one of those guys could work out. But I did wish there was a little bit more speed to this offense than there is.
I could see that being a concern, but I don't know. In the second round, I don't know who I would have taken at that point. I mean, if you're just looking for speed, I guess that's one thing, but
yeah, let's see. I like, who would I have taken? Coleman was gone.
Leggett was gone. Thomas was gone. Worthy was gone.
Yeah, that's true.
It was a tough break for them because the reports said they tried to trade up for 32.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't pull it off, and then it went. I mean, they were what at 35, or they picked at the 2-6, right?
Yeah.
The next 3 picks went receiver.
Yeah.
So the board got kind of crushed in front of them when they couldn't pull off that trade up.
The take maybe is they should have taken Mitchell, right?
Mitchell was still,
or Franklin, but everybody passed on Franklin many times.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
But overall, it's good because they got May. And May will, to me, be the day one starter. That's my prediction. People wonder when he'll start. I think he's going to be the guy. I don't think that he's going to be the sitting for as long as people think. Some people think he'll sit the whole year. I just don't think I think he's better than that, man. And Brissett is so solid, so he's going to be a tough one to beat out, but I think that May can do it. I think we're going to learn pretty quickly that he's that guy, even in this environment, I hope. But I don't know. I thought the rest of their draft was whatever, to be completely honest with you. We'll see. They went all offense, which was a decent strategy. They had to.
Fine.
Yeah, that's fine. But
no, they took a corner.
Yeah, they did take Marcellus Dial in the 6th round. But they also took Joe Milton.
They did.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I mean, Milton is a funny prospect. He's got that huge arm and whatnot, but I don't think he's quite going to be able to beat out Drake May.
Or Brissett or Zappi. It's just
yeah, they're gonna have him do just arm punts. That's what.
Well, you have May to do that.
Yeah, May can do that
May's
too.
arm is like almost as big. So, and he actually knows what he's doing. I do love to watch Joe Milton throw the rock, though. Give me all the slow motion Joe Milton throws that you can. It really is unbelievable to watch him throw. So I'm fine with it. Just give me some training camp highlights, and that's all I need.
When it comes to your feet, eBay's got your back, because with eBay's authenticity guarantee, real experts are checking your sneakers, every stitch down to the sole. Me personally, I'm a big fan of a classic Air Force, or maybe a nice suede or leather boot, but whatever it is that you're adding to the lineup next, head to eBay. From the drop to your doorstep, eBay does not play with your sneaker game. Just look for that blue check mark. So ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. So moving on to the next team in the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins.
I thought that they did fine. I wasn't the hugest fan of the Patrick Paul pick in the second round. He was a little bit less enticing to me than like a Kingsley, whose name I still can't pronounce off the top of my head, out of BYU. Like, they're both projects, but I don't know if Paul showed the same type of improvement over the course of the year. I'm not sure if he's quite as athletic. And I don't think his hand fighting was quite as polished. I think he's farther away. Like, this is the type of project where I was like, it's getting to be a little bit too much of a project. All right. I want a little bit more polished than what I'm seeing. But outside of that, I think Chop is going to be a nice addition to this defense. I think if you're bringing in a Ravens guy and you look at what they did with Owe, having 0 sacks his final year at Penn State, but just being a crazy athlete, and you add Chop, who is probably an even crazier athlete than Owe was, you can feel pretty good about what you're getting there. I think that's a scheme fit. Chop is a good player. We'll see how he is against the run, but he can mix in with a lot of these other edges, Chubb, Phillips, and lessen a little bit of the load for them as they work back from injury. So I thought edge was a good pick for them. Chop specifically was a good pick for them. And I liked Washington as well, Malik Washington, giving somebody, another yak threat. I think he'll be a capable third wide receiver for them. I thought he was a bit of a steal. So overall, I thought they did a decent job, but I do wonder how much they'll get out of that second round pick, Patrick Paul.
They did take Jalen Wright. You thought they might take Worthy, but they got the really fast running back, so they got someone ridiculously fast.
I like that pick for him. I mean, I think Wright's a beast. He was my running back 1. And I know it's kind of funny because they didn't really need another running back and they just spent some on a guy. And, this is sort of classic Dolphins, but it's classic Dolphins in a good way. Like, you can say what you want about them getting all that speed. Like, yeah, dude, it's good.
Yeah.
They're good, it works. So I'm super excited about that. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
I remember we were talking about the running backs, and I was like, what system is Jalen Wright even going to function in? And we're like, well, the Dolphins. And, of course, that's where he ends up, So I'll eat my words, because he's probably now going to go and have 12 yards per carry. Something ridiculous. But, yeah, I like the Chop pick. I think it's going to work out. I don't feel like there's not a whole lot to say about them. They added a lot of speed and athleticism.
They added who was it? Mo Kamara. And I thought that he was kind of a nice pickup on day 3 as well as a rotational guy. And one of their undrafted free agents was Braden McGregor out of Michigan. I'm a little bit surprised he went undrafted. I watched a little bit of him. Wasn't super impressed, but definitely thought that he looked draftable. So I think that they got someone, like, of all of these guys. I think someone's gonna be able to emerge as a good pass rusher for them. I like what they did at that position specifically. We'll see about the offensive line, though. We really will. I liked their Aaron Brewer pickup in free agency, no doubt. But Isaiah Wynn and Robert Jones as starters, and even Brewer's a little, he's not going to be dominant. So we'll see about that.
Tua, I hope you're getting the ball out quick.
He will be.
So let's move on to the Jets. They ended up trading back from 10 to 11, and they took Fashanu, which is many people's, tackle 2 in this class. Definitely, a very, very good prospect there. I don't think anyone would deny that. What are your thoughts on the rest of, Braylon Allen, Corley, Jordan Travis in the 5th?
I wasn't super high with what they did outside of Fashanu. And I really like Fashanu. It's a big need. I thought there was a slam dunk pick, and to trade back a little bit, that's good. Corley was not one of my guys.
No.
Allen was really not one of my guys.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Travis is whatever.
So Brady McGregor's on the Jets. I was on to the next thing. I'm sorry, everybody. Good undrafted free agent pickup for them. Anyway, I'm sorry, Matt. I skipped ahead one and forgot what I was on.
So I think they hit on the big thing, and I wouldn't be pissed if I was a Jets fan, but I think overall, it's not oh my God, they went and just killed it after that.
Yeah, I agree with that. The good news for them, a little bit like the Panthers, they traded a 4th round pick for a 3rd rounder next year. So they were able to move up in the draft kind of for free. I guess they didn't make a selection, but still, when you trade a 4th rounder for a 3rd rounder, that's just good business. So I liked that they did that. They traded back a ton in this draft, which I think is fine process all the time. I am with the analytics nerds on that, where it's more bites at the apple is always a good thing. But Jordan Travis, I don't think that he's going to be a starter. I think that his play style is way too wild and out of structure. He breaks structure too often and isn't necessarily a great decision maker when he's out there. So to me, as a backup quarterback, that was just, you could have used that 5th round pick on something else. I liked Estime more than Braylon Allen, I'll say.
Yeah.
So I was, like I said, like you said, Matt, Malachi Corley, not one of my guys. Yes, he's the yak king, but is he a guy? I'm always kind of against these gadgety guys. They don't really seem to hit at a high rate, and I worry that that's going to be him, especially with Hackett running the offense. I don't think he's going to become the next Deebo Samuel or anything like that. We'll see, though. We'll see. The Fashanu picked as well. I wasn't as high on it maybe as you guys were, but with Fautanu perhaps having medical red flags for them, I understand passing on him. So I didn't love this draft, but I don't necessarily think it was a total disaster from them. And overall, I like what they've done this offseason, even if the draft wasn't my favorite. Getting Hassan Reddick, getting Tyron Smith, getting Morgan Moses, who will be a backup now, and he'll be a good backup.
They brought in Mike Williams too, because that's the only thing.
You're right.
That's the only thing I was thinking of is at 11. I probably would have went Bowers. That's just me. I thought adding another weapon there could have been useful, especially because Mike Williams has a tendency to be injured.
Yeah.
But I mean, Fashanu would have been my tackle 3. So, I mean, I'm not mad at it, but I probably would have taken Bowers there.
I do wish they took a few more swings on weapons instead of Allen and, well, Allen is a weapon, I guess. But instead of Allen and Travis, maybe investing a little bit more to see if you could remove the possibility of Jason Brownlee starting for you or another year of Alan Lazard. 0 catch games or being a healthy scratch. Mike Williams does constantly go down your right. And if that happens, the receiving core is looking pretty weak. So I mean,
that's, you have to imagine, I mean, part of the reason why the Chargers got rid of him is because they were paying $40 million for a receiver who is very frequently not on the field.
Yeah. So I do wish they approached this draft a little differently. It's probably near the bottom of my favorites, but it's still not. It's not like Falcons where I'm like, holy cow, F grade. Like this was malpractice. Just not
my favorite is seeing some people give draft grades after the fact, and all of them are passing grades. It's like the lowest grade you'll see is a C+. And I'm like, how is that even possible, man? Like there's no way.
People are scared to make fan bases mad. People are very scared. I saw that whole matrix of the draft grades, and like the only guy who gave a D was Charles McDonald to his Falcons. So it's like he was just mad himself. He couldn't piss off the Falcons fan. He is one.
He is one.
Well, and that brings up one of my least favorite draft tropes. It'll be right after, and all the fans of teams are like, you'll see like the top comment on a lot of different articles or tweets is like, well, how can you give the draft a grade if none of the players have played yet? Oh, God. We won't really know how good these players are for a couple of years.
Yeah, bro, it's a prediction.
Man. Thanks, dude. How can you predict the score of this game when it's not played till 1 p.m. on Sunday? That doesn't make any sense, man. Okay.
Man, you guys did the Super Bowl preview. Why not do a Super Bowl review?
You realize we're gonna figure out what actually happens Sunday night, right, dude? I mean, that's what it is. And I see it every year. I see it every year, and it's like super common to be said. It's like, yeah, no shit, dude.
Yeah,
man. It's a prediction.
Although to be fair, most fans believe that like their team is just great. They do great every time, dude. I just think it's so funny. It's like, how is this not an A+? It's like, dude, it's not perfect every time, and no one can handle a C or look at a C as all right, and that's true too. For like, have you ever seen like music grades online or like movie grades online, where it's like nobody can give anything something less than like a 7? Like a 7 is the absolute basement.
Yeah. And then that skews people's perceptions of grading too. Because you give someone a 7 and as like a positive, you're like, oh, that was like pretty good. And then they're like, how is this not a 9? So it's just so it's so weird to like not ever give anything a bad grade ever.
What's your favorite grading scale? Do you like letters? Do you like 5 stars, 10 stars? Have you thought about this?
For like prospects or
just for in general? Like
you can go 5 stars if you're using
5 stars is my
stars
favorite.
is just 1 through 10. It's the same thing. A 5 stars is perfectly fine with me though, and I like that. But I also think that you know, like a 2.5 is like average. On the 5 stars, and I think a lot of people see like 3.5 or 3 is more of an average, and I disagree.
Yeah, I think 3 I feel positively about it. 2.5 I feel no type of way towards it, which is kind of negative, I guess. You want to feel slightly positive about something. So
yeah,
if you feel nothing at all, if you feel like it was completely average, I guess that is kind of a negative thing. But I don't know. As far as grades go, I would give this Jets grade this would be like a solid C- probably. I guess I wouldn't give it a D. And overall, there's not too many failing grades in this draft class, to be fair. I think I would give the Broncos a very low grade, which we'll get into, and the Penix pick a very low grade, and overall the Falcons draft didn't really move me. But outside of those two, I don't know if there's anybody who I'm like, well, you went into this draft and just failed. Like I feel worse about you now. Those are probably the only two where I would actually give them a low grade, but I would give them a low grade. Like for all of those analysts out there in that big matrix that I saw, for there only to be like 1D, it's like, come on, no one saw the Bo Nix pick followed by Ellis and gave it like an F. Like no one liked that. No one thought that was a really bad draft. Anyway, let's move on.
Well, the problem,
Or go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
The problem is like, dude, you see those articles where it's like, I don't know what the hell the Patriots were doing taking Tom Brady. And now everybody has in their head, like, that cannot be me. That will never be me. I will never give this draft anything lower than like a C or a B if they take a quarterback high. Because who the hell knows? And if I'm wrong,
they don't want to get old takes.
They took Brady in like the 6th round.
I can't stand that old takes exposed account. I think making fun of people for their whiffs. I don't mind it when like someone's being really obnoxious and they're wrong. But when someone's just like, I don't think this guy will be good, and then he is, or it's like, I think this guy will be good and he's not. It's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on the idea of like holding sports journalists accountable. It's like accountable for what? Like doing analysis and like giving a take. Like
if you're off 5+ games on how many games my favorite team is going to win, I think that's a couple months in jail. We have to hold them accountable.
A couple months in jail.
Yeah, we're gonna tar and feather you, bro.
We need to bring back the stocks, man. I hate to say it, but how else are we supposed to hold them accountable?
So true.
We're gonna hold them accountable. But anyway, we got to move on to
French
we still got 2 divisions left to do in the rest of this. Let's talk about the Bills.
Yes, Buffalo. They got Keon. They traded back a couple of times, and they still ended up with Keon Coleman. It was really risky because, like you said, they were kind of in the middle of that run on receivers. So there was a possibility that they would lose out on a guy there. I wanted Leggett for them. I really did. But Matt, I'm happy your Panthers got Leggett. I think he'll be really good. But Keon, I think will be a solid fit in Buffalo as well.
Yeah, and he's got a more electric personality than I thought. That's my takeaway with Keon Coleman. He is awesome. I've seen Bills fans be like, I hope he doesn't turn into a diva like Stephon Diggs, which I think is just a funny mindset for him.
How many good wide receivers?
They're like seeing him be like fun and like outgoing, and they're like, I hope he doesn't turn evil. I hope he's always this way.
How many good NFL wide receivers aren't divas? How many?
I don't even think he's a diva is the thing. He's just like a fun-loving guy. It seems like he seems to have. I don't know if you saw him go into the ice chamber that the Bills had, and he like left, and he's like, I feel like the Undertaker, and he made everybody turn the lights off and like play the Undertaker theme and like walked out of there. I was like, holy cow, he's funny. Like he's really charismatic, man. So I don't think that's even like diva behavior from him. Maybe he is like. Maybe he will demand targets, but yeah, that's like you say, Blaiden. Like that's a good thing if your wide receivers demanding targets. What did Marvin Harrison say? He's like, the only problem with Junior is that he's not enough of a diva. He's not demanding targets. He's not throwing a fit on the sideline.
He doesn't have to demand targets. He's just that good.
You know, he might be right on that. If Marv was a diva, they wouldn't have ended up with Kyle McCord at a quarterback for as long as they did. He should have threatened to transfer or something. But anyway, I just thought that was funny.
They also drafted Lil Wayne in the 3rd round.
What? What is that referring to?
Dwayne Carter.
Oh, right.
They got Lil Wayne. I thought that was funny. I'm sorry no one else got that. Bills fans, I hope you got that.
I should have gotten that.
Disappointed. Not surprised. I don't know. Outside of the Keon pick, though, how do we feel about the rest of the Bills draft?
Good.
Yeah.
I feel pretty good about it. I liked the Washington linebacker. I like Cole Bishop. I feel fine about Dwayne Carter. I thought they just kind of went through the list and they traded back. Cedric Van Pran, Granger, also like pretty good pick. Ray Davis, pretty good pick. I thought they just kind of went down the list and took everything that they needed and got pretty good value where they got it. I guess it'll always be judged their trade with the Chiefs and them getting Worthy. That'll be a big piece to this.
I have mixed feelings about that. Like, it's gonna suck if Worthy ends up being good, and you'll never hear the end of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I don't think it like really matters that much. I don't think it's really the end of the world. So I don't know.
And that also only that implies that Worthy was the Bills guy also, like that they wanted Worthy.
Yeah, clearly they didn't. But yeah, I agree with what Belichick said. He's like, you can't worry too much about ruining it for all the other teams. You got to do what you want to do. If you have a draft plan going into it and you wanted to trade back and draft Keon at 33 and you thought that was better Worthy, like I think that's better value than Worthy. We'll see if that ends up working out because Worthy is in KC now. But if before the draft, if you would have told me like, what would you rather have Keon at 33 or Worthy at 26, 27, whatever it was, I'd tell you Keon. So we'll see about that pick. As soon as the Chiefs do it, you're like, oh boy.
Well, they've got Mahomes and Reed, so yeah, if he'll work out anywhere, it'll be there.
Yeah, clearly the Bills agree with me, and they've been pretty well run as well. I mean, not as well run as the Chiefs famously, but like say what you want about the Bills, they've been successful. So I like what they did. I thought it was one of the better drafts, honestly.
AFC South time?
Yeah.
The Colts could be nasty, man. The Colts could be nasty. They had one of my favorite drafts of the entire weekend, getting Latu in the first, and Mitchell wasn't one of my guys at receiver, but the talent is definitely there, and I think to get him they got him at what, 54,
something like that. Yeah,
that's insane value, I think, at that point. So I really do think they could be just like those two alone, that could be nasty work for them.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we ID'd them as a team that could be going after the BPA guys and really like be somebody who catches the dudes who fall before the draft, because they have like needs everywhere in the sense that they can use a guy, but they're not so desperate at one spot that they have to take something. So them going Latu and Mitchell is about as good as they possibly could have done. And they got paid a little bit to move down to take Mitchell, which was impressive. Yes. On top of that, outside of those two picks, their strategy was acquire a lot of day 3 guys and take as many swings as you can, which is good process. So overall, I'm really happy with how they played things. And they maybe played it better than pretty much anybody else in the draft in terms of like just overall what their philosophy was. Plus, I think Latu and Mitchell are going to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked their whole draft really from start to finish. I liked getting Bortolini from Wisconsin. I liked Anthony Gould. I don't know much about the Pittsburgh left tackle, but he's very athletic. So we'll see what he develops into. At least you're getting a good piece of clay. Yeah, I thought, yeah, man, they got AD Mitchell and they got Latu. I don't know if there's a second round pick with more firepower than that. And they were on the brink of the playoffs anyway. You're getting the most explosive quarterback in the game back as your starter. We'll see how Anthony Richardson does with the footwork and going through his reads, and if he can kind of speed things up a tick from where he was at last year. But he was the most explosive quarterback when he was healthy last year. So, man, they raised their ceiling pretty substantially. We'll see if it all works out, but I do look at this Ravens team, not this Colts team. I look at this Colts team, and I do see a little bit of Ravens in them. With the quarterback they've got, I agree. The defense that they're kind of building, the play caller they have, like I think that they built this thing out around Richardson to the point where if he reaches the levels I think he can reach, this could be a very, very highly seeded team. So,
yeah, man, they're scary. They are scary, but don't need to spend too much time on them. Jacksonville, they got Brian Thomas. That's we'll say that much. They traded back and got Brian Thomas, which I thought that pick was pretty good.
Super strong, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was, I think one of the best vertical downfield threats in this class. Up there with, I think it's him, Leggett, and Rome are kind of the big three when it comes to just contested catch stuff. So I think being able to trade back and get him, and he's a freak athlete. I like that pick a lot. They needed another receiver. But then after that, Mason Smith in the second. Theo, I know you're not a big fan of him, and I definitely would not have taken him that high.
Yeah,
I do like Jordan Jefferson a decent amount, though. I think in the fourth, that's not horrible. But there's just, I don't know. The only pick that really moves me is Brian Thomas there.
Yeah, the Mason Smith pick is hard for me to stomach. I'm just not as high on him as some people. He's a beast, 6'5", 306 pounds. You see a little bit of Chris Jones in him on some reps. And maybe I just didn't watch enough 2021 film. I didn't watch any. Apparently that was very good. Freshman All-American, freshman all SEC. Very, very nice that season. But then in the past 2 years, he was injured because of an ACL. And then it's just his tape in 2023 just wasn't that good, I thought.
It makes me nervous for sure. I mean, a lot of the scouting reports you read on him is basically like, well, he was great in 2021, and then he messed up his knee in 2022, and then he came back and he wasn't as explosive. So it needs to be more like 2021. And it's like, dude, I get it. It could work out. And I guess if Jacksonville took him, they feel confident that he's going to look more explosive next year. But it's a big risk. It's a big risk, especially when you already have some film, some film made showing that he didn't come back right away very good from it, because a lot of guys who do recover well, they can come back pretty effective that next year. So I guess they're taking a risk there. And then Jerry Jones is a guy who I really hadn't watched. I went and looked on a couple of big boards. I mean, he was like sub 200, and that's a guy they got day 2. So you have to excuse me for not knowing one of their day 2 picks. But typically, I do agree with the consensus board guys. On average, if you're taking a guy, who's that big of a reach, it's probably not a great thing. However, I will say that them getting Brian Thomas Jr. is a very big deal. I think going into this, I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm supposed to get excited about their offense, or like, how am I supposed to believe that they're going to be any better? I don't even see the path a little bit. Getting Brian Thomas Jr., a guy who has insane upside, a guy who's very physical, can go up and get the ball, which is something they really needed, at least tells me it's like, okay, well, if you want to say that things are going to work out, you're going to say that he's going to ball out, the rest of the weapons complement him well, and then Lawrence plays his best football. That's what you're saying. And that is possible. I'm not saying that I love Jacksonville. I really didn't like their offseason. But I do really like the Brian Thomas Jr. pick, and I thought they got him at very good value.
Yeah, we'll see. They made some big additions. We'll see just how big they can be. Brian Thomas Jr., Mitch Morse at center, Eric Armstead probably being the biggest acquisition. Maybe that's enough to push them into the playoffs where they weren't last year. But shockingly, I didn't love a Trent Baalke draft, and there were plenty of free agent moves that I thought that I disagreed with as well. So I worry about the way Jacksonville is building this thing out. Maybe they make the playoffs, but I just don't think they're building the most well-rounded or
it's
talented
tough,
team.
man. I think Houston was better last year. I don't think there's any reason to believe they won't be better this year. And I think Indianapolis looks like, if Richardson's healthy, I think Indianapolis will probably be better this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this could very well be a case of if you're not better, you're worse. And on paper, Jacksonville just does not seem significantly better than they did last year. I don't want to get into the offseason rankings too much, but I'm a little worried about them for sure.
Yeah, they kept it seems a lot of the same. Like you added Armstead and Brian Thomas. Like maybe we're underrating it, but it does seem a lot of the same. But they didn't really. They got Javon Foster in the in the 4th round, but that's really the only offensive line addition that they made in the draft. We'll see. But we got to move on. Let's talk about the
Tennessee Titans.
Blaiden, you pick. Let's do it.
I don't know if I like this draft, man, for Tennessee. J.C. Latham at 7. That to me felt like forcing need. I know people like Latham as a prospect. He's like super young, and he's really he's a good player, but
Latham. I think Latham will be good. I think Latham will be good, but I think at 7, with Odunze still on the board, it's too big of a discrepancy for me to call it a great pick or anything. I don't know if they were just super locked in the tackle and they were doing that no matter what. Mm-hmm. When Alt wasn't there, that's the decision that they made. But it wasn't my favorite pick. On top of that, Devondre Sweat in the 2nd round, at the top of the 2nd round, with what other guys went around there. And, I know they had the ability to move up and all that stuff. I really can't get behind that pick. Yeah. Sweat is big, and he's going to be a force to move. There's no question about that. But he really limits his ceiling with how big he is. And nose tackle, guys, you've said before, Theo, it's like, even if you can't be moved in run support, you're going to have to move plenty of times. A lot of run support is getting lateral on like outside zone and stuff like that. And if he can't do that, there's only so many things. There's only so many things that he's going to be able to do. And I just think a player who is doing what he does. I mean, we saw with Jordan Davis, who is obviously a much better prospect than him, but has had limited impact because he's really big, and just like the run stopping and being on the field all the time. Those things can compound on each other. And that's another big thing with Sweat, where it's like, did you pick a guy in the 2nd round who's going to be too big to stay on the field consistently? Seems very possible. I didn't love it.
Yeah, I just wonder, where is Tahir Tart? He was a good nose tackle for them, and now he's just gone. Why did that happen? When did that's my big question. It's like, you could have found Devondre Sweat's skill set and spent that 2nd round pick, that top 50 pick, somewhere else. I just don't think that was necessary at all. That was one of my least favorite picks of the draft, honestly. And Latham, 7's a little bit rich for me, but I did have him slightly higher than Fashanu on my board. So to take him as tackle 2, I think is a bit understandable. He is super strong, and he is going to work with Callahan, who's from a lineage of offensive line coaches. His father is one of the best to ever do it.
If anyone's going to get him right, it will be Callahan. I can confirm.
Yeah, we'll see what Callahan can do with him. He is so strong, and he is light on his feet. I do think the ceiling with him is quite high. Like, could he be a guy that just throws people around all day, like Trent Williams someday? Maybe. I think that he's got that kind of nastiness, and he's got that kind of strength, and he's like, the way he moves sometimes, it's like, yeah, he could be quite the weapon. So at 7, it was a little bit rich. I had Rome higher.
Would he have been a top 10 player on your board?
No, he was at 14. But they did really, really need a tackle. So for them to just stay and pick Latham, I understood it. I'm not quite as low on it as some people. I like Cedric Gray. He was a sound linebacker. When I watched all these linebackers, he's the one I'm like, okay, he looks like a pro guy. In terms of what he's being asked to do, in terms of his body, in terms of his athleticism. It's a little on the lower end, but he looks solid, and other guys are more projections than him. So I liked that pick. I thought their draft was kind of like the Jets, a little bit on the lower end probably for me, but not necessarily a failing grade.
If you told me Latham and Sweat and Gray were all good players, I could be like, yeah. And if that's the case, then it's like, okay.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair way to look at it. But
Sweat, I don't even know. Sweat, we'll see. If you told me they were good players, I'd be like, Sweat was like good enough to be top 50. Like, he's making like a top 50 type of impact. I think it would surprise me, I'll say. And that pick is weighing down a lot of their draft. If it went like Latham, I don't know, someone else at top 50.
Latham, Did Newton go before here?
Newton did go before Sweat, but they could have like traded up. If they would have gotten like Latham, Newton, and Gray, I'd be like home run, but not how it worked out. And Latham is really the only offensive lineman that they got.
I don't know. To me, there just doesn't seem to be like a super impact player, which I don't know. I guess they did get Calvin Ridley in the
Latham
offseason.
could be that. Latham could be that, I think. I mean, if he's a bookend left tackle, and I think that he could be. They also got Khalid Duke, my boy, from Kansas State, in the undrafted free agent.
There you go.
But I don't know. It was fine. I questioned it, mid. But
yeah,
it is kind of mid.
I fear. But that leaves us with the Houston Texans as the final team in the AFC South. Theo, they got your guy with their first pick in the second round, Kamari Lassiter.
Outside of that, I thought it was mid. I liked Kamari Lassiter, obviously. I think that he's going to be a great nickel for D'Amico Ryans. He's physical. There's in the open field, you can see the lack of speed show up. Like, let's say someone makes a catch on a different corner, and then he's got to go track it down or something like that. He really is kind of limited in his range in that way. But as far as his coverage goes, he's pretty great. The best cover corner statistically in this draft. Just didn't allow shit. His EPA per play when targeted was super low. His just overall yards allowed very, very low. The lowest, I think, in the SEC last year. Him and Rakestraw both didn't test well, but I think they're going to outperform that. But then outside of that, I don't know. Cade Stover in the fourth was not a good pick to me. Kalen Bullock, athletic, but anybody on that USC defense is barred from being picked on day two for me. Like, you're all too bad at tackling.
Yeah.
Fisher is a second rounder. Like, he's fine, but lacked a little bit of upside. I don't know. I wasn't crazy high on their draft, but I did like that they traded back and got Lassiter.
I don't mind them taking Bullock, who has a bunch of range. I agree about the tackling, but I can live with that from a guy who has the ability to sort of be single high and whatnot. Lassiter was a good pick. I'm glad that they invested in their secondary. I was happy to see that. But I don't think it was like some home run, slam dunk draft for them. And I honestly wonder, it's like if their options were have pick 10 and 27 or pick 23, which no, that wouldn't have been it. They got a second next year from the Vikings. Regardless, I wonder if maybe I would have rather had the 23rd pick over the 2 seconds. Maybe. I don't know. I know value would probably say that the Vikings were wrong there. But if Fisher was the extra guy that they got, if it was Lassiter and Fisher, or maybe whoever you could have gotten with the 23rd pick, I maybe would have stuck with the 23rd. But I'm not too mad at it. This is another draft that I think is fine.
Yeah, one of those where I wouldn't give it a failing grade because of Lassiter, but Lassiter is doing a lot of work for me here. Maybe I'm just not super moved by the rest of it, but it's not bad necessarily. It's not like crazy reaches all over the board. So yeah, their free agency is what will really lift them over the top more than this draft, which is fine.
As far as like total holistic off season, I would say it's a positive for Houston.
Yeah, it is. The Diggs trade still, I think they may have come up on the short end of that. He's a free agent after this year.
The trade for Diggs itself, I think, is fine. The restructuring of his contract to me is senseless. I think that's like a total lose-lose.
Mm-hmm. But Al-Shaair was a good addition. Danico Autry, good addition. Hunter, probably a good addition. So, Mixon, mid acquisition that they probably could have just waited until he got cut instead of trading for him. So it's been an up and down off season for them. I haven't agreed with every move, but I have agreed with some. So, yeah.
So that brings us to the AFC West. final division here that we'll talk about. Got to start with Denver, I imagine. Bo Nix. I mean, the best thing you can say about that pick is that they also drafted his wide receiver 1, Troy Franklin. But if you ask me, the only thing I'll say is that like Troy Franklin in the 4th, I think is fine value, but it's like you have a bad quarterback with a receiver with ball tracking issues. I don't love it. I don't love it.
Well, Franklin was a good pick in the 4th round, and I honestly thought
I think in the 4th, I think in the 4th it's good value.
I think it was great value, yeah. And Estime, I liked that as well.
Yes,
yeah,
those are
2 banger
really
picks
strong
on day 3.
So I'll give him credit for that. Bo Nix at 12 is completely unexcusable, and like I liked him. I felt like more than average. Like I sort of see like he's a guy who avoids sacks a decent amount, like pretty good. I know he gets the ball out quick, but even when he get pressure, he would avoid sacks a decent amount. And I thought that he was playing well within Oregon's system. And, he's got I feel like a little bit of a quicker throw motion. Like, I see some of the bits there, but like at 12 is just sort of complete. Hey, we have to take a quarterback here. And Sean Payton's explanation of this pick since it's happened has only made me feel worse.
It's been horrible. Oh, his backpack only had football stuff in it.
What the hell is he talking about? Did JJ McCarthy come with a basketball? Like, what sense does anything that he's saying make?
Michael Penix Jr. showed up with a set of golf clubs. And
I love to think that, like, Bo Nix pulled out the lacrosse. I know this isn't true. I know why guys use lacrosse balls, but I know that I like to think that he pulled out the lacrosse ball, and it's like that really was for playing lacrosse. Like he was going to go play lacrosse with his buddies. He's like, no, this is the lacrosse ball. No, it's for football actually. And John was like, sweet, that's so dope.
Dude, it's no. Go,
I understand that's not like. I understand that's not. The majority of like why he picked them, but to have that play any part into your process is insane. On top of that, like him going up there in his press conference and talking about like, oh, here's his adjusted completion percentage. Dude, give me a break.
Dude, Come on. He was watching the game through the calculator, bro.
I mean, it's just total nonsense. And if this doesn't hit, he's gonna look kind of dumb because it just feels like really bad process. I just think it's really ridiculous.
I saw a stat that on 3rd and long, Bo Nix threw it past the sticks 28% of the time.
Man, what is the average? I would love to know.
Caleb and May were at 50%, and they were like the next lowest in the draft class.
Damn.
Wow. Dude, it's a disaster pick. Going back and watching the Knicks film after it happened, like he's a check down artist, dude. There's stuff that he turns down the field to throw it to his running back with a linebacker right on top of him. I think his arm is bad. I think you can watch the combine and you'll notice one extremely severe underthrow on a deep ball. Like it literally dies yards behind where the wide receiver is running. Like it fully falls behind him. And on a lot of throws I noticed from Bo Nix, these receivers are like picking it up off of the ground. Like it's not hitting them nice in the face mask. They're going to have to like adjust to it low. So I really questioned his arm. I thought it looked especially bad if you go through all of his combine throws. He had one really nice deep shot, I'll admit. But the rest of them, I'm like, man, they seem to be
Did he participate in the throwing really hard drill into the mat?
Let's see.
I'm curious as combine. To what his
That does not move me as far as arm strength goes for whatever reason. I feel like that doesn't give you a good or as good of like just throwing it like 5 yards ahead of you with no pressure coming and you can just stand there and wind up as much as you want versus like actual in game have to place it somewhere. I feel like they're two very different things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Milton had the highest number, so clearly like
they should have drafted him. And hell, if the Giants had gone quarterback, who knows which quarterback they would have taken at 12? It very well could have happened.
Yeah, but Knicks overall, like footwork bad. I just think when we watch this offense, it's going to be run, check down. You know what I mean? Like one of these offenses where you look and at the end of someone posts the RBSDM box score at about the third quarter, and it's like, wow, look at the Broncos offense. Their average depth of target is 2 so far in this game because Courtland Sutton is in trade talks. I guess Franklin is a deep threat, so maybe they'll stretch the field a lot with him. Sure. But how much is he going to see the field right away? I still don't think this receiving core is very good. The offensive line still not that good. They have a sick stable of physical running backs, and they can run behind Quinn Miners and Mike McGlinchey, yes. And that's all cool. But outside of that, I just don't know where this roster how this roster stacks up. And when Bo Nix is your number 1 overall pick, and Jonah Ellis is your next pick, and Jonah Ellis has his fans, I just don't think that he's that type of athlete. Like, get off too bad, like too small, like speed to power, not good enough.
I think he's the reverse of like a height, weight, speed guy.
Mm-hmm. He's super productive, so maybe I'm wrong, but
I don't know. It just feels like you've got to be quicker than that at his size to be productive in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that. I didn't see much that made me think he should be a day 2 pick. He's not threatening. I don't know how he's threatening. Maybe he's got the best with his hands in the league and has the greatest pass rush plan. And he was super productive, and he had a good combine as well. So we'll see. But sometimes just because you're number 1 in the FBS in sacks or whatever it is, doesn't mean that you're good. Like Bailey Zappi had 62 touchdowns and 5,000 yards, but he's not.
That's because he's a freak, man. He's different.
He's not an NFL guy. And I kind of feel that way about Ellis. Like he's that productive, but just not threatening. So
yeah, I
liked their day 3, but their first 2 days were too much to overcome. I don't think Knicks is going to succeed, especially in that environment. I think that this draft means that Sean Payton is doomed to fail. I think that he got himself in a situation,
and this will always be the question to me. Like if this doesn't work out, like why did he want to go to Denver?
I don't know.
What the hell was he thinking? Where it's like, dude, that team is. I mean, they were already doomed at quarterback the moment he got there, and it's like, well,
they had to give up their first for him.
And it's like, they're just way too behind the 8 ball. So I 100% agree. And in a division with Patrick Mahomes and Herbert, it's like, dude.
Yeah, and Harbaugh, dude, it's not happening.
I wonder if when he initially took the job, he did think that Russ would still be good.
Why? He saw Russ for years. We knew that Russ was bad.
And then when he realized Russ wasn't good, he was like, well, maybe I can fix this team.
There are 2 videos on the Stay Hot channel called how will Jerry Jeudy do with Russ, and how will Russ fit into the Sean Payton offense? And I think both of my takeaways on both videos is Jerry Jeudy will stink with Russ, and then the year after I was like, Russ will stink with Sean Payton. And if Theo Ash NFL knows these things, Sean Payton ought to.
Sean Payton NFL doesn't know ball, I fear.
Well, I guess I didn't look through the contents of their backpack, so how something I
see Sean Payton season doesn't know.
He expected there to be comic books and weed and bro is not that's what was in Drake May's bag.
Comic books and
cookies
weed.
And candies and Game Boys and it's like, dude,
you got porn in there and oh, dude is a slob. Oh, Nix, he's got athletic tape.
That's great. We need some of those.
He had.
Oh, brother.
He had everything you look for. He had Andrew Tate DVDs and
real man
things you need to be an alpha.
Real man.
But why didn't anybody at the Super Bowl ask me what was in my bag? Why didn't Mina Kimes come say quick, give me a bag check, and I pull out my mic and my laptop and my pencil, and she's like, oh my God, please come work at ESPN.
Everything he had was for podcasting.
My favorite comments are like, someone needs to make podcast equipment more expensive. But yes, let's move on to the Chargers. They got Joe Alt, one of the blue chips in this class, and they also got Ladd McConkey. So they
Another
did
one of the blue chips in this class. How do they do it, man?
How did they do it?
Look, first off, I watched your video, Theo. You're right to go ahead and hit us with the Ladd is actually going to be super productive and super good. Now, that would have been true wherever he went, mind you guys, but it's going to be particularly true.
I'm switching up on
Justin
Ladd.
Herbert. I thought they had a great draft. I feel like I came to defend the alt pick pretty quickly. At the end of the day, like, he's going to be very good, and you will not care which position they drafted long term. When you're picking with the 5th overall pick and you are year 1 of a rebuild, I promise you, well, we need a receiver a little more. It's like, dude, that does not matter, man. It really, really, really does not. And it's not that I don't think that the Chargers are like not going to struggle at receiver this year because they got Ladd McConkey. It's like, they will. But it's not a 1-year process. You're going to struggle somewhere if you're the Chargers. You know that for a fact. So I think the fact that you hit on a guy who I think is about as close to a lock as you can get in the draft, and who is probably going to be a very good franchise tackle for a long time, you know, who cares? And I think back to the Bengals the Bengals Lions thing, where it's like Chase or Sewell. Reality is that like either of those guys would have been perfectly fine. It's like, yeah, the Bengals made the Super Bowl because of Chase, so you know that ended up being great for them. But they've needed a tackle since then, and the Lions, I think they need a receiver, even though they have Amon-Ra. So it's like, as long as you hit on one of those big time guys, I don't think you're going to really care. I think it's going to be and I like Neighbors and Adunze.
And the Bengals ended up taking a tackle this year, you know, and tackle cost them, right? Like, their offensive line was pretty putrid in that Super Bowl. Chase was open, but guess what happened? You know, it literally was the meme in that Super Bowl on that last play. Like, obviously, if Sewell is there, maybe, you know, who knows what happens. The entire season is different, but yeah, it's like eventually you need a lot. It is more than just a 1-year thing. And it's going to be super nice to have the best tackle duo in the league. And Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt could very easily be that. Harbaugh reminds me a lot of, I've been watching the old Super Bowls, and Harbaugh reminds me a lot of Lombardi, to be completely honest with you, like in the way that he builds the team out and the roster construction. And the physical nature of everything. Like, he really is kind of that modern day. I think he is a modern day Vince Lombardi. I think that's the type. He goes and he just wins everywhere. He's known as this motivator, and
he's got 1 chip, by the way.
1 chip, but a lot of wins.
Half the season for his 1 chip, by the way.
A lot of wins.
Audio listeners, do not go to video and look at what hat I'm wearing. Do not do it.
It's a Michigan hat. It's a Michigan hat.
But I don't know, like, he wants to run the damn ball, and then he wants his Bart Starr to carry him when that doesn't work. And I think that they've got that. He's going to be able to attack whatever. You need both ends to be elite now. If you're a defense, you need both linebackers on either side to be elite. Otherwise, they're going to attack you in that direction. It's going to be very, very difficult to get any pressure on Herbert. It's going to be good. It's going to be good to have that bookend duo, and especially with Harbaugh, who he says, like, we view tackles as weapons, and I believe it with him. Like, he legitimately knows how to use that offensive line as a weapon and if you're a bad team and you can't hang versus their running game, like, they're just going to run. And it's always kind of worked with Harbaugh. Like, he's always kind of given that toughness to an organization, and now that he's building it here, and like, he's got his Staley, he's got his brain, he has his Joe Staley now, who is a super key part to those 49ers teams. And yeah, I think that it's going to end up being a very fruitful relationship. And I think I was kind of freaking out right before the pick happened. I'm like, man, if they don't take a wide receiver, their passing offense is just going to grind to a halt. But as soon as they took Alt, it's like, well, everybody's freaking out, but they're just going to take a wide receiver on day 2, and then everybody's going to be happy again. And that's exactly what happened.
I mean, I like the alt pick enough to say it's definitely it's definitely a good draft. It's just like, it's not going to be one of my favorite drafts because they didn't take a receiver. But
the thing is that I think Ladd is going to be great for him. I really do. I think him working with it is going to be fantastic. And I kind of like I like the Colson pick as well. I thought he was super good for Michigan. I don't think he's like a perfect player. Obviously, he went in the 3rd round, but he feels like he has the range and the instincts to be passable in coverage. And he obviously was getting downfield a lot for Michigan. So I thought that was a pretty solid one too. And then I like that they added Brendan Rice in the 7th. I was super high on him.
It's Jerry's kid.
But first off, it's Jerry Rice's son. Are they trying to possibly influence Jerry Rice to come out of retirement to play for them again? More on First Take. But I like that they added 3 receivers to the room. They're really trying to get at least some competition going in their weakest position group. Again, people get way too short of mindsets when they're talking about picks as high as what the Chargers had with 5th overall and teams that are as far away as the Chargers, where it's like they're not really that far away. I don't want to make it sound like they won't be good for 5 years. It's not the NBA, but they're like not going to go win a Super Bowl this year. So if you're going to have a bad position group, that's fine, man. And I know it like sucks for Herbert. He's going to be okay. It's going to be all right.
Yeah, and there's something very valid to the idea that it's easier to find a day 2 receiver than a day 2 tackle. And or a late first, like,
I mean, there's receivers, there's great receivers every year. It's like, if you have a problem with receiver next offseason, it's like, well, we really have to get a guy. What are the odds that you can go trade a 2nd or a 1st round draft pick for like a stud? Almost 100%. It is almost a guarantee. Tackle? Nope. No such luck. So I totally get the alt pick. And again, most importantly, he's going to be really great. And that's all that people will care about.
I 100% agree. I was tripping before that pick, being like at the last second, being like, no.
And I think that's an easy, natural reaction to have, especially before they got Ladd. It's like, oh my God, who is in the receiver room, like, at all? Like, it was legitimately like up there with like the worst position groups
ever,
like in the entire NFL, bro. Like, it's a disaster.
I present to you the 2017 Browns linebackers.
Yeah, it's like up there with just about anything outside of like.
Really, the 2017 Browns. Buddy, I mean, why are we looking at the linebackers specifically?
Yeah, the linebackers really close in that year.
Yeah, the linebackers were horrible.
If it wasn't for those damn linebackers, bro. So yeah, I like the Chargers draft a lot, and I went into it honestly wanting to hate it. So
Harbaugh cooked. You knew.
I think it's definitely like I was building out my top 5, and it's definitely an honorable mention. Like, I think it's within that 6 to 8.
He got Justin Herbert to be his Bart Starr. He got he got Joe Alt to be his Forrest Gregg. He got
there we go.
Ladd McConkey to be his Carroll Dale.
Come on, man.
When I hit Ladd with the Carroll Dale comparison, it's gonna be awesome.
Let's move on to the Raiders, though.
The Raiders.
They killed their first 2 picks. Go. I love that they went Bowers at 13. I could hear the analytics bros crying and weeping and wailing because he's not listed as the right position. He can't be good. He can't impact the game. He does suck. He is a bad guy.
Mm-hmm. He's the worst.
But dude, I was super excited about that. Them just. No team more needs to make contact in the first round than the Vegas Raiders, man. It's been such a disaster, and I think here they did that. I think how they build this thing out, I'm not 100% sure. I feel like their path is not super clear, but there was no option for them at quarterback outside of trading up more than anybody else to get one of the guys outside of the top 3 who I just don't know if I could have justified that. To then go in the second round and get JPP pretty late, I thought was fantastic. I think he's going to be a very solid starter. Again, I don't know like what this team's identity is overall. But I thought they did good making some contact, because the next offseason, if you have a couple more pieces there, then you can find your path. It makes it a little bit easier. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is the path that more teams should take. I would much rather have Brock Bowers than Bo Nix. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
I understand that a quarterback, it's a lottery pick. You need it. It could hit and you could have a franchise guy. Yeah, you could. But you could also not. Yeah, you could also not. Like, reaches in the draft are usually reaches. Older quarterbacks in the first round is usually a bad idea. And now, like, look at the Raiders' expectations. They got no one at quarterback. If they suck, no one's getting fired. Everybody understands. Like, it's not the end of the world. Like, look, we don't know who our quarterback is. Next year, we'll really need one. And they'll probably have a draft pick high enough to get one, you know? Like, the time wasn't right. There is next year. As long as you make good picks, your job as a GM will be safe. Like, if Bowers is a good tight end and if JPJ is a good center, no one's going to look at Telesco and say, like, holy shit, dude, you suck. Like, you missed. You didn't get Bo Nix. You didn't get Michael Penix. Like, it's a disaster. And the decision was made easy.
The Broncos this year. Like,
seriously, I mean, I think there's just so much more to a team than just the quarterback. And I feel like this year, the decision was easy for the Raiders. Like, maybe they would have taken Penix over Bowers if he was there. But I just think at the end of the day, maybe it was luck, but they ended up in a better team building strategy, because now you can add a quarterback to a better roster, like the Vikings. Everybody said, you know, they are the best spot to end up in. So the guy they got will probably be better than some of the guys drafted above him, right? Like, and now the Raiders will be in that same situation, and maybe they will have the 11th overall pick or some pick that isn't ideal to get a top guy. Or maybe they'll have the third best. You know, it's like, who knows what will happen.
Sanders will be a Raider. This is a lock.
Shador will not be a first round pick next year, I think.
He will still be a Raider.
The fact that he's the odds-on favorite to go number 1 overall. How can
I don't even think that's total nonsense, whoever that is. That's only because it's like this far out, those places, like, they're not giving Shador won't be the number 1 overall pick odds. So they can set it at whatever. And it's like, you know, people who are big on Shador, it's, you know.
Yeah, it's not a scouting report, right? It's just Shador is a huge name in college football. Like, he was productive, but he's not going to be the number 1 overall pick. But anyway,
no.
I just think that you're in a better situation grabbing good players and then being a little bit more patient with the quarterback position. Like, I think when the right pick becomes apparent, it'll become apparent. And I just don't think it was apparent for the Raiders this year. So I like what they did. I think they had a really underrated draft. Looking at the consensus grades board, this huge matrix of a bunch of different outlets giving grades and where every team ranks, with the Atlanta Falcons number 32 and the Pittsburgh Steelers number 1. The Raiders are at 24, and I just think they had a much better draft than that. I think that it's going to end up in a higher spot. Yeah, some people gave them bad grade. Some people gave them bad grades because I think they missed on a quarterback, but I think it's okay.
Sorry. I think everyone else reached on quarterback, so.
Exactly.
So, but that brings us to the last team that we'll talk about for the draft, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. They traded up to take Xavier Worthy at 28. I didn't think he was worth taking that high, but
he wouldn't have been Chiefs. My pick, but I'm not going to say that it's bad. I mean, he's a deep threat, and he's got crazy speed, and he's got legitimate, like, deep threat skill. He's not just fast and in college, you know. He wouldn't have been my pick at receiver, but if you're the Chiefs, I kind of get it. You know, I see the vision.
Yeah, I love his fit in Kansas City. I think Andy Reid is going to understand how to use him, not only as a deep threat targeting him, but as a deep threat to influence safeties and to open up space for other people and to get him the ball on corn dog on the last second in the Super Bowl, and he'll score the game-winning touchdown, you know, as a motion threat. I think that someone with that speed has natural gravity, and it's about using that gravity to impact the whole offense. And the fact that that ended up with Andy Reid is like, okay, I can't be too mad at it.
Right.
They did have Hollywood Brown, though. I do wonder
how
those
long
two
of a
skill sets
deal
will
is
complement
Hollywood Brown on? That's what I have to, because I don't think your first round pick should be influenced by a guy who you have on a 1-year deal, especially when it's like, well, their skill sets just kind of overlap.
Yeah, and Hollywood Brown is not as fast as he was as a rookie. He's had a lot of injuries. He only had 500 yards last year, 700 the year before that, which isn't
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but I think it's perfectly fine. I wouldn't ding this pick too much for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I just, I think that it's Stroud said it. You want your receiving core to have a diverse skill set, and when they have their best 3 out there, 2 of them are going to kind of look the same. It's not the end of the world, certainly, but your receiving core all of a sudden becomes very light. It becomes very small. There's just some things with their receiving core that is still far from perfect.
But you could also think about it from the perspective of if you put out a group of Worthy, Rice, and Kelsey, and then whoever else you want out there, maybe that's your one, that's your like first rotation. And you have a second rotation where it is Hollywood Brown, and then you have 2 rotations with similar skill sets, and you're not sacrificing.
Yeah. I just think that we've seen the Chiefs have so many deep threats. Like when they had it really built out how they wanted the receiver room, it was like every single guy was like that. That's how they do it over there.
Yeah.
And I agree, you don't want that much overlap, maybe typically, but I'm not gonna doubt.
Sure,
I'm not gonna doubt it.
No, I think we're on the same page. Just voicing a concern. Also, the trading up for him, I don't know. It wasn't a complete like, oh my God, league is. I guess people said it anyway, but like, oh, league is over. God. We really led. It's like, okay, it's not like they're gonna like, I don't know. It's not like it's the most perfect move ever.
Right.
But it is dangerous for them. I love the scheme fit. And then I like the rest of their draft. I've talked about how much I like Kingsley Suamataia and his potential. Penei Sewell's cousin. He's a dancer. He can jump out of the pool as an offensive lineman, quick on his feet. We'll see what they can get out of him. He's going to have good guard play to the inside of him, which is going to help his development, I think. So I like that pick a lot. And overall, I thought they did a nice job retooling.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Jaden Hicks was also one of those guys where they got him like late 4th round, and consensus had him way higher for what it's worth. Which is never a bad thing, and they took a decent number of swings. So I liked what they did a solid amount of too. I agree.
The Penn State center, not tackle. The Penn State center they got in round 5 was a little intriguing to me when I watched some games that involved him. He kind of immediately made me take notice of him because of his movement skills. There's still a lot. Again, he has to learn, kind of like Kingsley, but man, he can really get out in space and move around really well. So he was also pretty intriguing to me in the 5th round. So I really liked what they did. The Worthy pick, I'm probably not as high on as some, but it was good. I thought of all the teams, he had the best fit. So I think that they are the team to beat in the AFC still after the draft, and got some potential really, really good players with the athletic upside that they swung on.
Absolutely.
I agree.
But that's the entire NFL draft. We thought about how we wanted to play this out. And we were like, you know what? Let's just go through every single team. So that's what we did. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Real quick before you get out, if you had to pick your absolute favorite draft from any team.
It's a good question.
I mean, I could say the Bears and be really lame.
That is the lame pick, but I think it's the right pick.
I mean, I think the Bears had the best draft. I would also I'd throw the Chargers up there in terms of, I think Alton Ladd is like 2 really big hits.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think of who else.
I love the Colts draft.
The Colts are another good one. I'm never like that super crazy bold with it, I guess. I'd say those are 3 really good ones.
Yeah, I liked what the Bengals did a lot.
Yeah, I was a fan of them as well. I thought they really crushed it. It's my favorite draft of theirs in a little while here, probably since they got Chase.
Yeah, maybe I'll say the Bengals. They're not getting a ton of hype for their draft, so maybe I should just say the Bears, and I'm trying to be different. But I think that what the Bengals did was super underrated.
Well, the Bears, it's like, they had the number 1 overall pick, and they got a franchise quarterback. So that's probably, it's like, that's like, yeah, that gives them the best draft, but we're talking like relative to how much they had, right? A little bit. People get it. People get it. The Bears had the most valuable draft, obviously.
Yeah, they came out of it with like the best players. But yeah, I like the Chargers. I like the Saints draft a good amount too.
Yeah, I low-key like the Lions draft as well, to get my boy Wingo and to get Arnold, which is one of the biggest steals, really, of recent drafts. I think like it's not too crazy often that a guy who's supposed to go that high falls for no apparent reason, right? No character concerns, no medicals, just that's the way the board fell, and they came up and got him. So, and Rakestraw I thought was a nice pick for them as well. So the Lions are also very, very much up there. In fact, they might be my favorite.
Yeah, my favorite of like non-Bears is probably the Colts, which is like the draft that I liked the most. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But that'll do it for another episode of Stay Hot. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And until next time, we will catch you on the flippity flop.